All right,
Something like
everything's hot, so that's good. We're just gonna wait 2 seconds for the Instagram to catch up as always. Give me 1 second.
I'll take a break from making calls here.
you can keep making.
You can keep making them. It
It's okay.
takes a long time.
It's only like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 left to do, and then I'll start packing up the orders when we get off this podcast.
Jeez, it's a never ending battle for you, huh, Shane?
Well, the issue right now is I'm trying to get them all finished by this weekend so I can start getting my turkey gear together because I leave next weekend for Florida.
Jeez.
And
You're gonna do the? Do you always do Florida every year?
no, I do whatever my daughter's spring break takes us to. Like we went to New Orleans one year for spring break. You know, her spring break up here. It usually occurs about the week prior to a Mississippi opening or Florida opening. So we went to New Orleans one year, and so I just hunted Mississippi after they left. This year she wanted to go to Florida, so we're going down there, and then they're going to fly back home, and I'm going to start hunting. So I was trying to talk them into going somewhere a little bit later because I wanted to go to Alabama when it opened, first week of April or 5th of April, 6th, whatever it is. But yeah, that's kind of where it goes. Now, next year, I probably will be back in Florida if I draw a quota hunt I've been trying to get on. I've got enough preference points that I stand a good chance of drawing it. If I don't, then I'll go somewhere else, I guess.
Nothing better than that.
Yeah, Florida's not really my favorite place to hunt. It's open. I wish every state along the southern. I wish they split the country in like tiers. Like all across the South was all April 1st, and then the next was April 15th, and then up here was, whatever, April 7th and then April 15th or something. And then I could just pick any state down there to go. But if it's in, and I'm gonna try to go. I want to get started turkey hunting.
Is Florida a tough state to hunt in? Like, what is the difference between Florida and a lot of the other states?
It's mainly just the terrain. A lot of sand, and depending on what part of the state, the northern part has a lot of pines, and there's palmettos and other stuff down there. And then you get farther south, and it becomes cypress heads and this and that. And to me, I don't know. I've done it enough that I like going to new areas, and Florida's kind of getting boring. It's not that it's any tough or anything. It's just I'm kind of bored with it.
Is it all Osceolas where you're hunting down there?
The line is somewhere central to north central Florida is the imaginary line. But if you want what they call a true Osceola, but I've seen birds that look like Osceolas farther north in Florida. And
you hunt a lot of public for them?
Yeah, I basically only hunt public. I can't remember the last time I hunted private for turkeys. It's been a while.
There's something wrong with that. Well, why don't we get this thing underway? Why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do?
Shane Simpson. I'm originally from South Carolina, born and raised there, and grew up there, I guess, for quite a while. And then I moved to Minnesota, got into competition calling, done well with that. Been videoing my hunts since I was 14 or 15 years old. Started putting them on YouTube as I hunted with others in early 2000s. Put them on YouTube like in 2007 was when I created my YouTube channel. And just slowly progressed, improved, I think, the product that I'm doing, learned to edit better, just incorporated more cameras, different angles, try to make it the viewer feel like they're there. And here we are today. That's kind of the most brief way I can describe
it. Yeah. What got you into the whole filming aspect of it? Because that's not, especially at such a young age, at that time, obviously, there wasn't a lot of people filming. There wasn't a lot of people that were into it, right? I mean, like, what kind of jump started you into it?
I've never been asked that, but I do have an answer. It's probably my uncle. My uncle had we're talking about the days of the big shoulder-mounted VHS camcorders. He had one that he would film our football games. I played Little League football, and he would film all the games. And I'm like, oh, it's so cool to go back and watch the games, And I wanted a camera, to record stuff, And I liked to hunt back then, so naturally I just started filming hunts. And they were really crude. I had no way of editing them. There was ways you could edit it on the camera itself, like audio dub stuff, but it was so primitive that I didn't even edit anything. Basically, a hunt involved us talking briefly, and then showing the turkey come in, get shot, or whatever it was, and then us celebrating afterwards. That was basically it, the gist of it. And I just enjoyed looking back on it. I even took people back then, like I took a friend's kid and got his first turkey, and I still have the footage from that hunt back way back then. It was just, I don't know, it's just something cool to do and be able to, you know how it is when you're telling a story, stories often sound more interesting than they do on video because the people embellish a little bit. But I always like recording it because, you know, like, oh man, if you were just there, you could have seen what happened. Well, now I can show them the video what happened, you know. So that's kind of what got me involved. My uncle had one and it really interested me, and I got one for myself.
What do you think that were some of the struggles with carrying such a big video camera in turkey hunting?
Well, I didn't record as much turkey hunting back then. I did more like dove hunts and deer hunts, and just the turkey hunting was kind of a occasional thing. I mostly turkey hunted without a camera. I had a literally this size, like a foot and a half by 3 foot by a foot and a half tall padded case for the camera recorder, and I had a shoulder strap, so I carried that whole big bag out in the woods with me. You know, and we'd get up in the deer stand, and I would get it out, and I'd roll some just stuff going on, squirrel or whatever, and you know, and so it was. I didn't video a lot of turkey hunts because I didn't have a tripod. It was all I was hand holding everything, and just made it difficult. Deer hunting's pretty easy because you know, like my brother would be in one tree and I'd be in another tree filming him, or vice versa. He'd film me.
Mm-hmm.
And the dove hunt's pretty easy. I just step my camera in the case with the lid open, and all of a sudden here comes some doves. I yank it out. I can see them coming in the distance. So it's pretty easy for those types of hunts.
That must have been kind of crazy, and then like kind of being there and filming and coming through the curve of what it is today. I mean, like it's a whole different ball game in filming today.
Oh yeah, and I didn't have the money. You know, we were, I guess, lower income back then. You know, big family, 5 kids, and you know, two parents, 7 of us, and I had to save up my money to get my own camera. But you know, I wanted like a big production camera, but it was way out of my budget. But you know, as consumer cameras improved, you know, they came out with the mini DVs. You know, I had the little tape in the side of it, instead of a big VHS tape. And then they came out with you know, digital memory, and then the HD camera came out, and that's when my channel really kind of kicked off. Was in like 2009. That's when I had high definition HD, my first HD camera, and I really started putting more effort into my videos. And I don't know if there's any of the videos on my channel where you can go back and watch that are older than that, because I think I privatized a lot of them because they look, you know, you get on down the road a few years and it looks cheesy, and I'm like, I got to make that a private video.
I think that's part of the growth though, right? Like even like for us as podcasters and video, like to watch yourself grow and like go back on some of them old hunts and like, oh man, was I an idiot? Like, can you believe that I did that or I
Yeah.
recorded it like that or whatever, you know, like that growth like is so important to become like that much
Oh,
better in doing
oh
it.
yeah, I know. I mean, I look back at some of these old hunts, and I hear me calling, and I can remember my train of thought, or my mind, in my mind back then. I thought I was a pretty good caller, and I go back and watch it. I'm like, you were terrible. That's why
Can't
that
believe
video's
you killed the
private.
turkey.
Oh yeah, I was. It was a lot of perseverance and stuff back then, and a lot of, you know, hours in the woods that helped do that, and less about the calling. But go ahead.
Videoing it's your own critic, right? Because like
Yeah.
you can get out of your own skin and like watch yourself and you're like you said, oh, I can't believe I called like that. Like I can't believe that I made those noises or whatever. And it almost makes you a better caller, right? Or a better hunter because
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
your
I
own
mean,
critic.
well, I mean, I don't know if it really makes me a better hunter, but to your point earlier, I see my growth or my improvement over the years. I'm like, oh, I was doing that back then, and I'm glad I don't do that anymore because I've learned that this is a better decision to make in that situation, type of thing. I still enjoy watching those old hunts, you know, They're kind of enjoyable for me to watch, and sometimes they're funny because how silly I was, or how I don't know how uncomfortable I was in front of the camera. At the time, I thought it was okay, but I look at it like right now, I casually talk to the camera like there's a person there, and that's the mindset I've learned to get into as I got did it more years. Is instead of like you're talking to a box and you're trying to act out, I relax, and I know there's an audience behind that lens. They may not be there right now, but I know they're going to be there, and so I look at a camera as a person or people I'm talking to, and so I'm very relaxed and very casual in front of the camera these days as compared to in the years past.
Does that just come with time, or is there anything you can do to get better at that?
Um, in my case, it came with time and age because when I was younger, I was more self conscious about what I did, how people, I always, wondered how people would portray me. Now I don't really give a shit as much, you know. Um, so, so it's okay for me just to be me in front of the camera, and I think that's just mostly with age. I've kind of popped out of my shell and I think being in front of the camera a lot helped with that. And also I meet a lot of people and talk to a lot of people that watch my stuff, and so that helped me get out of that shell.
It definitely takes a little bit of time. Like it's even when I first started filming and just talking or doing little like how to videos or whatever, and you kind of think in your mind like, who am I to give this advice to somebody? How to use a crow call, or how to use an owl call, or how to set up a deer stand like this, whatever the case may be. And you're like, why would anybody want to hear from me? And like, it's that confidence booster. Like, just talk to it as if it's your friend, like the three of us having a conversation. That camera is somebody, like kind of like what you're saying, Shane, because but it takes a little bit of time to get over that curve, like, because at
Yep.
first you're super self-confident, you're like, oh, I hate my voice, or I can't believe I said it like that, or whatever the case may be.
Yep. And one of the things I always look back on is, I would because I didn't do a good job video my hunts where I showed what was going on where it didn't need a narration. Early on in my videos, I would film the hunt and then I'd sit in front of a black curtain and describe what was about to happen. And I hated doing that. It was hard. I kept making so many mistakes, and I'd go through the whole paragraph again of what I had in my head. I didn't really write any things down. I had bullet notes. I had a piece of paper. And I watched other folks on TV and they were just so natural, doing all this, hand movement, and like they knew everything they wanted to say. And then I realized later they were doing a bunch of, cuts and stuff and blending it together and cutaways, cutting the different scenes and I was like, oh, I'm trying to do it in one take all the way through perfect, and I don't need to do that. But then like I said, I started adding other cameras and doing a better job of documenting what was going on where I didn't need those narrations afterwards. So that made it a lot better.
And that's the tricky thing, is because a lot of people will go and they'll do things where you said, like, they'll put cuts in, or they'll go back and they'll go on their thing, and we're trying to do it probably just like yourself, like you're trying to do it in the moment, like you're trying to have
Hmm.
that realization of what it is. And like, I've done it and filmed with some people and some real good friends of mine that have some pretty cool filming, and then I realize how much of it they go back and they redo it, like recuts. And for me, it's a tough thing to reenact that. Like, why wouldn't you catch that in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Like what the real actually is.
Yeah, and if I could give a tip real quick to people that are interested in filming hunts or filming anything for that matter, the biggest mistake I see, like if I have somebody hunting with me and I hand them the camera and they feel their tag, now they're going to film me. The biggest mistake I see they do is they don't treat the camera like it's their eyes. If you're the camera person, your eyes should be in that viewfinder, and everything you want to look at with your eyes, you should be using the camera to do that. And also, they're a bad people that are new to it have a bad habit of not recording enough.
Mhm.
You're recording, and as soon as you finish talking, it's hit the stop and put the camera down. I'm like, no, keep rolling, just hold the camera up. And I had that happen where I was like going through some footage, and I'm like, man, I wish you hadn't have put the camera down so quick every time because we had some great stuff going on. And I see that I was guilty of that, but
Mhm.
it comes with time. I learned that you can never have too much footage, but it's always, you can't recreate when you don't have enough footage, or you could recreate it, fake the scenes, but then it just ain't authentic.
I'm guilty of that, even self filming. It's just me and the camera in the tree, and I'll go back and watch my footage, and I'm like, why did I stop then?
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason. I could have just left it running for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes longer, and once the moment's over, it's over. You can't
Yeah.
recreate it. You can try to recreate it, but you can't get it naturally like you could have that one time.
Yeah. And I think the biggest reason a lot of people cut it short, and the reason I did, it's battery life. You're trying to conserve battery, or you don't have enough SD card space. And so I just started buying really huge storage capabilities for my camera, and external batteries, and long batteries that last a long time, and that way I could continue recording as much as I want. Now I have to fill up a bunch of external drives. I go through like 15 terabytes a season, but when I get done with all that, I can go back and delete clips that I know I'm not going to need and free up space. But I can't, like I said earlier, you can't recreate that stuff.
It's better to have it than to want it, right? Like
Yeah,
if you can put it together, you could put together a way better hunt by having what you want, and all of the things that come along with it. Like, did you miss a gobble, or did you, if something is to happen, like trying to catch a film, like how many times would you film a hunt and you miss something because you weren't rolling a camera? So it's always great to have that second angle camera constantly running, so you're not missing out on it.
exactly.
So I want to get into kind of some of your calls and some of the stuff that you have going on, because you were saying before, like you were a competition caller and whatnot. Like, what brought on you making calls and owl calls and all that?
So I basically always, well, I shouldn't say always, but early on when I still lived in South Carolina, I went to I don't know if it was the NWTF convention. They used to bounce around different cities, but I remember there was this big event going on up in Charlotte. They had the Grand National Calling Competition, or they had some type of turkey calling competition. There was like Matt
Mm-hmm.
Moret there, and gosh, I can't think of all the big names that were there. People I've seen on TV. And so I wanted to go there and watch it. And I was watching it, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I would love to be able to go up on that stage one day. All my buddies were telling me I was a good caller. But I heard those guys, I'm like, I'm not that good. But I always thought it'd be cool to be on that stage. But I was too shy back then. There's no way I would have got up in front of a crowd, especially to do turkey noises. And then fast forward to Minnesota, 2009, I saw a billboard up along the highway, said some type of Northwest sports show and a turkey calling contest. And I'm like, oh, this is my chance. I said, no one knows me up here. If I make a fool of myself, they'll never know who I am, and they'll never see me again. So it helped in that regard. Like in South Carolina, I was always concerned somebody I would run into that I'd know. It's like, do you see Shane up there make a fool of himself on the stage? Anyway, so I decided to enter that contest, and I committed to it, and I'll never forget it. Once I committed in my mind that I was going to go enter that contest, for like the 2 weeks prior to that contest, I had butterflies. I was so nervous about what I was getting ready to do. And then I went and did it, and it wasn't that bad, actually. I actually placed third in my very first contest. They had an owl hooting division too, and I was so nervous about just getting into the turkey call, I didn't enter the owl hooting, and the owl hooting division occurred, and I'm like, shoot, I could have probably won that one. I think I sound a lot better than those guys. And I've really, done well in the owl hooting side of the competitions. I've tied for first at Grand Nationals in it, and then lost in the call off. So I mean, that's how close I came to winning the Grand Nationals in owl hooting, and I've won a lot of local contests. The turkey calling side of things, I've done well with. Also, I won a lot of state championships and opens in other state, but um, when you get involved with turkey calling contests, if you really want to get better and get to that top performing, or whatever the word I'm trying to think of, um, your best bet is start making your own calls, because then you can tweak them and get them exactly like you want. And so that's what I did. I bought a call press and a tape cutter and the supplies, and started tinkering with mouth calls. And then before you know it, people wanted to buy some of my mouth calls. And I had my YouTube show, and I had a website, and so I created a web store on there, and here we are.
It just keeps trickling
Yeah,
downhill from
yeah,
there, right?
yeah. It wasn't
It's
a path that I intended to go down. It just kind of happened as one thing leads to the next.
well, then I guess it pays for some of your haunts and it pays for some of the materials to be able to have calls and that kind of thing, right? I mean, imagine makes it easier.
Yeah, I mean, I've had sponsors and stuff, and they give me supplies for like hunting gear and a little bit of money, not a huge amount. But I guess as my popularity's increased, my turkey call sales have increased. I don't need to rely on that revenue from sponsors as much. And right now, I don't have any sponsors. I have zero sponsors. It's um, yeah, and I don't spend a whole lot to travel to turkey hunt. Believe it or not, a lot of people are like, oh, that's got to be super expensive. The biggest investment for me is time. As far as vacation time,
Hmm.
I can go. I'm just think of a deer hunt I went to out in Nebraska. I was there for like almost 10 days, right? Glassing and then deer hunting. I paid $55 for all my food for that entire 10 days, and then the gas to get there and back. I slept in my truck, so there was very little cost involved. I think my license cost more than what it cost me in fuel and food to be out there. As long as you don't, live in luxury while you're traveling, you can do that sort of stuff. So I mean, a few $1,000s, $2,000 or $3,000, I can get through a spring.
Just chasing turkeys all up and down then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just the fuel is the biggest thing, and license is the biggest cost for me.
Because
You
once
know,
you're there, you're hunting anyways.
Yeah, yeah. Sleep in the truck, eat a can of beef stew or something, and you go to sleep, and you're sleeping or hunting. So
when you're sleeping in your truck, do you do a lot of like Walmart and truck stop parking lots? Or are you like doing remote camping, like state parks, or what do you mostly do?
wherever I can park legally and not get towed. So Walmart, I don't think I've ever stopped at a Walmart and slept. I did stop one time and dozed off about an hour while I was waiting to meet somebody. But as far as sleeping overnight, if I'm hunting like national forests, you can just park anywhere there and go to sleep. But I sleep in the front seat. I just slide the seat back, recline it, put a head pillow. I got heat and air and music. Believe it or not, like my Explorer that I used to have, I could on the cold nights, I could let the truck idle all night and it burned maybe a gallon of fuel at most. So, you're looking at less than $3 for heat and air and radio all night.
Hmm.
Um, if I'm in an area where there's not necessarily, where I can't park where I'm hunting, then I'll head to the nearest, like if there's an interstate or a 24-hour store somewhere nearby, or even if it's not a 24-hour store, if they're open till 11 o'clock, I will ask them, hey, I'm gonna park right here. I'm gonna and sleep a few hours, and I'll get up at like 3 a.m. Is that okay? And they're like, sure. And I'll find any place like that close by. I try to sleep close to where I'm hunting. If I'm out west, South Dakota, anything like that, it doesn't matter where you park out there. There's nothing. There's nothing out there.
The good thing about sleeping in the national park is no one can beat you to the gate if you're at the gate the night before.
Yeah, I guess so, but I never park and sleep at the gate. I never liked that idea. I just try to find me a random pull
Yeah.
off somewhere that and just sleep there. And I try to stay near the main roads also. I don't want to be 4 miles back in this national forest where somebody may, who knows what kind of riffraff's going to come back there. And then I'm talking about different parts of the country. Out in Nebraska, South Dakota, you're likely not even going to see a single vehicle all night. And if you do, it's probably a farmer or a rancher or something just riding by, going back home after drinking beer at the bar.
so what do you do when you're out there and you're trying to you're getting out there and you're trying to find a place to hunt? Like, are you just going in the morning and listening for them, or are you trying to do some type of pre-scouting prior to getting out there? Because I guess a
It,
lot of
it
people
all
probably never been out there.
it all depends on when I arrive. If I arrive, I'm gonna recollect two hunts that I went on. One, I was headed out west, new area, never been to, and I didn't get there early enough in the evening. It was in the nighttime when I got there, so I just went ahead and parked and decided I would just go to this one spot I picked out on the map. It was a pretty high spot, and just listen at daybreak for goblin, and then scout as it got lighter, or hunt my way and scout at the same time. and if need be, drive around. This particular area, there wasn't a whole lot of access via road. It was a huge chunk of public. And so I just started at a high spot. And then when I heard some distant gobbles, I just started hunting my way there. Another place I went to, this was down south. I wanted to get there in time. I picked out a spot on the map that I thought may have some gobblers. And I hauled butt to get there. And I got there basically after fly up. And I think it was a little too late and I couldn't hear anything on the roost. And so again, the next morning, I decided, okay, here's a spot I kind of want to start listening in the morning and then just go from there. I just, you know, it's hard to describe what I'm looking for. You know how it is if you're deer hunting, you've been deer hunting for a while. You can walk through the woods and you just come up on a spot and your mind says this is a good spot to deer hunt. You know, without any other clues other than your mind saw things, your eyes saw things, your mind registered. Okay, this is a good spot. I've had that happen so many times in my past where I get to a spot, I'm like, oh, I'll hang a stand right there. This is just everything just lines up, and then get my tree, and then an hour or two later, here comes a deer, and I shoot one. That's what with turkey hunting. Also, I can look at a map, and little spots just start clicking for me, and I don't know best how to describe it. I will say I am looking for like water. I'm looking for high spots when available. Transition edges between mature woods and then a 10-year-old clear cut or a field, stuff that I know that is likely going to attract turkeys. But that's how I approach it. If I get there in the middle of the night and I'm unaware of what it's like, I try to be in a spot that I can start hunting and at least listen, and then start hunting from there. Or if it's got a grid of roads where I can ride around and start coyote howling and owl hooting and turkey calling, owl hooting, coyote howling, whatever I need to do to strike one from the road and then dive in. It all depends on where I'm going out in the country, how many other people live in that area that might be more pressure, the accessibility to the piece of public, and when I arrive.
Now you just brought up coyote howling. Now that's one of those things that's like touch and go with a lot of people, right? Like, do you use it a lot as a locator?
Yeah, quite a bit. I use the barred owl the most, and sometimes they'll gobble at the 8 note, but a lot of times they'll gobble at the caterwauler and the laughing sound that the owls do. And if that doesn't work, then I'll start coyote howling. And I see the comments like that. People like, "Oh, you wouldn't do that down here or over here." Turkeys will shut up on you. Well, I'd hate to inform you, but I do it everywhere I go, and I get birds to gobble everywhere I go. Um, I mean, I can understand it. Like in South Carolina, I didn't see coyotes when I was younger, but as I got older, I started seeing more and more of them. And how the rumors get spread. Oh, the DNR brought those coyotes in here because the insurance companies wanted less deer, and so they wanted to kill the deer. I don't know what's true and all that or not, but all I know is early on, I could see that coyote howling would maybe shut a gobbler up. But now they've been around for decades, and the turkeys know what they are and know that they're not a threat as long as they're a safe distance away, and they'll gobble at the coyote howls.
Do you so I want to take it back real quick. You were talking about the owl hooting, and you said the eighth note or the chuckle and all that other stuff. Like what exactly is that? So people can understand.
I'll run the call, describe it for you if you like.
Please.
So the 8 note is basically the typical owl sound. You hear that woo 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 woo. And the caterwauling is, you get a mating pair out in the woods, especially in the spring. That's what they're mating, just like the turkeys, and they start doing that laughing sound. Sounds like monkeys. I'm sure you've heard that part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that really gets them to gobble a lot of times. That caterwauling, it's a little louder and it's a little more higher pitched, I guess, than that soft 8 note. The normal, there's a lot more vocalizations that I'll do, but that's the basic two that I do. That softer 8 note is a bird. Maybe he's right on the fringes of gobbling anyway, and just any sound will trigger him. So I'll start off with that, and then if he won't gobble that, then I crank into the caterwauler. And if you want it spelled CATERWAULERING, caterwauling.
Do you have like a theory on why that happens? Because I 100% find that a lot. Like I always start with the 8 note first, see if he hits it's a little softer, and then a lot of times like if I'm pretty confident there's a bird there, I'll hit the 8 note and he doesn't hit it, and then I come right back with the chuckle, and he almost always hits it on the chuckle right after that. Do you know why that is, or?
And it's just a more higher volume, higher pitched, louder sound, just like the coyote howl. So
Mm.
I could 8 note and a turkey wouldn't gobble. I could caterwauler and they wouldn't gobble, and I could coyote howl and then they would gobble. You know, and it's like, and the coyote howl is like really loud, ear piercing. I had a buddy I was hunting with one time, and when we met up at dark, he said, "Man, I heard your coyote howling," and we looked on X and we were a mile apart, and he could hear my howl from over a mile. And that just demonstrates how loud it is. And so, just like an ambulance, and off in the distance, you hear the sirens, and they'll get birds to gobble. It's something a little higher pitch, a little louder, will sometimes trigger that reluctant gobbler to gobble. And then sometimes they're just in the mood, and any sound, you can go ooh like that. I've done that with my mouth. Just go ooh, one single note, and they gobble.
Mm.
Pitch kills turkeys. It seems like that change in pitch, even in turkey calling in itself, it seems that pitch kills them. Like as far as getting them to holler.
Yeah, I mean, like I can. You'll see in my videos, I'll yelp to a turkey. Sometimes I'm calling, but sometimes I just want him to gobble so I can figure out where he's at. Has he moved? And I'll do that. Some cutting at the end. I may go just a few little cuts, and then that abruptness and loudness is enough to trigger it out of him.
It's so now that you've gotten them gobble, I guess. Then what are you trying to do from there? Like, are you trying to move in on them? You trying to call on them, or what is kind of your outlook on it?
So let's say I owl hoot and get one to gobble. First thing we'll do is drop a pin on Onyx to where I think he's at. If I don't have a good beat on where he's at, I may try to triangulate him by moving off a few hundred yards and owl hoot again. Now I've got two lines intersecting, so I know he's right in this area somewhere. Um, um, I'll drop a radius. You can create a radius on the pins on Onyx. I'll create like a 200-yard radius, and I want to get to that edge of that radius before I do any turkey calling. And so once I know where he's at, I look at the terrain, got the radius. Okay, I want to be on this spot here. It's a little bit of a high spot. I think I can call him there, and I'll just hightail it there. As I get closer, I may owl hoot again just to pinpoint him and make sure he hasn't moved anywhere. And then I get set up in an ideal location, or I stand, prepared to be set up. I look around, there's a good setup here, but I'm gonna call with a mouth call real quick to see what his interest is, and then get set up, and then just start working them, and then adjust as necessary. If I struck him with a pod call, which I do a lot of times, walking and calling during the day, it's basically the same strategy, but I may hit him with owl hooter much earlier to get him to gobble again to see if he was actually coming my way. I don't want to run into him. So I'd prefer to strike him with a locator call than a turkey call for obvious reasons.
And you'll get them to holler back even to an owl call the middle of the day, or is that more
Yeah.
that first light?
Oh, all day. I was talking to a fellow on the phone the other day, and he's like, "Oh man, I just thought a crow would be better. I hear crows all the time," and I'm like, "Exactly. The turkeys become immune to it. They hear them all the time. They don't hear owls hoot during the day. It's just not as common as it is in the evening and early morning. And a turkey, all of a sudden, they're hearing crows and stuff. They're oblivious to it at this point. All of a sudden, they hear woo, 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 and that's different sounds enough to bring out a gobble in them.
Do you
So
do you use any other locators besides the owl? Like, do you have any other go-to if it's not working? And the coyote, obviously, like daytime.
My three primary ones are the owl call, the coyote call, which I'm doing on my turkey call that I hunt with. And if that doesn't work, I'll get a glass surface pot call. I like glass surface, high pitched, just ear piercing, and I'll cut on it and I'll get them to gobble. I don't use a crow call very much. I can do a decent crow call, my mouth call. I've been practicing with that, and I can do a pretty good natural voice crow. Although I'm just looking over here at a crow call. I did pick up at the convention, it's the most realistic crow call I've ever heard. I mean, it's most crow calls you get from a company, and it's like meh, meh. It's like a buzzing crow sound. This one has that that authentic
Mm.
sound to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna carry that with me this year, and just use it occasionally when I can't get a bird to gobble, or just use it occasionally because I think it's really nice sounding the crow call.
Do you
What
know what it is
was?
off the top of your
Yeah,
head?
I was gonna say.
What
Do
what's
you know
that?
who makes it off the top of your head?
Oh, it's Wild Talker. My buddy Mike Batty, um, he designed it, and this is a new version that they just came out with. His son-in-law or former son-in-law, I think, owns the company now. But they're expensive. They're like $100 each, but they're in my mind well worth it. They sound just like the real thing.
I mean, for killing, it doesn't really matter what it costs, right? As long as it's killing them.
Yeah,
$100 is $100, I guess.
it's a one time purchase. It'll last
Mhm.
me for the rest of my life if I take care of it. So
Well,
I got 10 more years of me. It's $10 a year.
Crowbusters used to make one of the better ones that was out there, and that was one of the better crow calls because it had that low rasp that. But
Yeah,
then a lot of them, like you said, they're more like kazoos, like.
yeah. This is what it looks like. Now the
Okay.
guy running. Can you see that? Is that in
Yeah.
focus?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's reversed, but
It's all
Yeah.
right.
um, I the guy that I got it from can do it a lot better than me. I'll tell you a funny story real quick. I heard him playing this, and I said I'd like to get one, and he said he's got his little box. I said no, I want the one on your neck you were just blowing. And so I bought it, and my buddy was there and wanted to get one also, and so he started running my buddy's call, and I was like, his sounds better than mine, and so I blew mine, and he blew it, and it sounded better, and so then he blew mine again. I said, oh, it's not the call, it's me. So I was like, I just got a little bit of practice stuff. The acoustics in this room is not great, but if you could hear it in person, it
Mm.
has a really good sound.
Do you have
You
to
can hear that rasp
you have
underneath
to
it, like.
bite? You have to bite down on that reed a lot, or is it
Oh
just
no, I'm not biting. I just got my lips on it
okay?
loosely, so it's and you can adjust where you can put it all the way in. Yeah.
That's a good sounding
I still
call.
got some practice to do, but it'll get there eventually.
It'll get him to hammer. Shane, I got
Oh
a quick
yeah.
question before we get away from the owl call. We were talking earlier about cutting the camera off too soon. I saw a video you one time doing an owl call, and I forget what you said, something about that an owl hissed at you, and you
Oh,
hooted,
he chomped at me.
and then
He snapped me.
you hooted again, and then all of a sudden you kind of ducked and the camera shut off. What happened?
So, and that when the owl didn't really swoop down on me, I was screwing around with my buddy.
Yeah.
But he did. I think he did that one did hiss at me. But I've had them a lot of times when I'm calling. Like I said, the owls are mating in spring too, and so you go in there and you blow an owl hooter. A lot of times I'll get them to fly into real close. And I had one fly in, and he was up above me. He was just snapping his beak. He was like, and I never seen him do that. And immediately I thought that was a sign of aggression. And I looked it up, and sure enough, that's what owls do when they're really pissed. And I've had them kind of to the point where I thought they were going to attack me. They were getting really aggressive and close and snapping their beaks. But that one did. He kind of hissed at me. He was like, and I said, did he just hiss at me? And he's like, yeah. And so I blew it again, and just screwing around with him and my buddy, I just ducked like the owl had come down. I put it on TikTok just as a kind of a little comedic thing. But
Yeah, you got me.
yeah,
It is cool though, because like you said, they are breeding that time of year, and you do call in quite a few owls, especially in like the evening, trying to locate. And like sometimes you'll call and you'll hear a real owl, and then you'll call again, then you'll hear him, he's closer, and you don't always hear him fly in. And sometimes you'll just look up, like, holy shit, where'd he come from? Like he's
they're almost 100% silent when they're flying. But I sorry to interrupt. Go ahead and finish what you were going to say. I was going to add something.
No, I'm all set.
Oh, okay. What I was going to say is, that's the thing with calls and stuff. I see a lot of people say, "Oh, you don't need an owl hooter; you can just use your mouth." That's what irks me the most when someone comes on and ask the question, "Hey, what's a good owl hooter?" And then you see these 3 or 4 knuckleheads that says, "You don't need an owl call, just use your mouth." What have you heard this guy call with his mouth? He may suck, and that's why he's asked for an owl hooter, you know?
Mm.
Um, but the other thing is um, sounding realistic is a lot of people disregard it, but there's a lot of times when I've been out on an owl call and I get a real owl to respond, and that real owl wouldn't respond to me going, "Ooh, ooh, ooh," with my mouth. But that owl call makes a really authentic sounding hoot and a caterwauling, and I'll get an owl to respond 3 or 4 or 500 yards away. Too far away that, if there was a gobbler there, he wouldn't gobble to my owl because it sounds so quiet. But because I got that owl fired up, there was a gobbler, 100 yards from him, and he gobbled to that
Hmm.
owl because now it's in his ear and loud. So you got to think outside the box when you're thinking about realism and everything. Like, what is it affecting? Also, not just getting a turkey to gobble. Is it enticing the other owls to gobble? Is it I look at all the wildlife that I'm dealing with out in the woods, not just the target animal.
Mm.
I think it's so important though too, like you said, like yeah, I can make a owl hoot with my mouth and I can get them to fire off, but you only get so many mornings and so many hunts on them turkeys. Why wouldn't you really want to sound like the actual
Yeah,
animal that you know what I'm saying? Like why would you buy a cheap turkey call just to maybe sound like a turkey and have maybe a 25% chance when I can buy a real good turkey call and really sound like a turkey and spend my time practicing and have a 75% chance of killing a turkey
yeah,
or making them gobble. Like you only get so many mornings, and especially for most people, if say the season's a month long, they only get 4 Saturdays. So why wouldn't you just practice with an
Mm.
owl hooter to get them to gobble and then work on them birds and do it right? Then try
yeah.
and do it with your mouth. Like I can make a
And
mouth call and
how many
anything.
how many gobblers are you passing by because you didn't get them to gobble with your natural voice? Because as good as a lot of people are using their natural voice to owl hoot, I have never heard anyone that can caterwaul like a real owl.
Hmm.
They go wah, 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 like that, but it doesn't sound like a real owl, and it's not near the volume of a call. And case in point, I was hunting with this guy. He was using his natural voice to owl hoot, and he did it several times. He even did the little wah, wah. Oh, we didn't hear a bird gobble. And I said, "Do you mind if I use my owl call?" "Oh, go ahead." I got it out and I 8 noted nothing. 8 noted and went into the cattle water. There's a turkey right there. That had had I not done that, we would have just went to another area and we never
Hmm.
would have known that gobbler's there. We ended up killing that gobbler.
And that's what happens a ton of the times. Like you get somebody. Me and Steve had it happen last year.
No, it was a couple
Was it
years ago, but
couple years ago, we had gone into this piece and we knew them birds were there. We had already owl hooted at them. We had the birds right there. We were ready to kill them. We were set up, and we somebody comes in and they're doing the same thing. Woo woo woo, and then ah 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 ah, woo
That's a
woo,
pretty good
like
natural voice crow.
time and time and time again, and it's like and they didn't get nothing to gobble, and they just kept on going. And
yeah,
you're like, if you spent your time and you did it right, you'd ought to gone killed that thing right then and there. But what do you,
Yeah.
like why? Like I don't know. And Shane, to 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 the crow call thing, I practiced my life off to get the right crow call, and I've killed a lot of crows with my voice.
Yeah. It sounds really good.
I
I
saw the.
tell you, to the point of leaving gobblers behind. I'm sure I've missed gobblers too, and
Hmm.
I'm leading up to a little tip for folks listening or watching. I kind of speed locate a lot of times. If I've got the access, a grid of roads, whatever, where I can stop at a spot, owl hoot, nothing, coyote howl, nothing. I head off to the next spot and do the same. Eventually, I'll strike a gobbler and I can go hunt them the next day. But if I had the time to sit there like owl hoot and wait 15, 20 minutes and then owl hoot again, they would probably gobble on the second owl hoot. I think that sometimes that coyote howl shuts them down. I've seen it where they gobble an owl hoot, but not a coyote howl. And then I couldn't get them to gobble again to an owl hoot. And I've also seen the opposite also where they didn't gobble to an owl hoot, but they gobbled to a coyote howl because it was louder and ear piercing. But to my point is don't get in too big a rush also. I'm guilty of that a lot of times, but a lot of times, I'm traveling out of state. I only got a few days to hunt. I'm trying to cover as much ground. I'm trying to find that hot 2-year old. I'm not worried about getting inch and a half spurs. I just want to find a gobbler that's willing to play the game the next morning.
That reminds me of another TikTok video I got to ask you about. What's the backstory with locating that bird at 10:30 at night?
So I actually located him early in the evening. We saw him cross the road with a hen. That video is dropping next week, I think.
Okay.
At any rate, I saw him cross the road in the hen. We went and tried to locate some other birds. I came back up there at sunset, and he was still in the road. I owl hooted or something, and he gobbled. And yeah, that's right. We saw him earlier. We came back later. He crossed the road and went into the woods as we drove by, and we pulled off a little side cut. And I got out and owl hooted or ran a call, and he gobbled. I was like, I think he's back in the road. And we peered out, and there he was down the road in the road strutting. There was a hen with him, and she wanted to roost across the road. Anyway, he gobbled his head off. And I'm like, this bird's going to die gobbling this much and hanging out on the road right here. People are going to see him. But anyway, he went to roost, and we went off and roosted other birds. We came back at dark, and he gobbled again. And because I was hunting with a bow, I said, you know what? I want to get in there and find a spot to set up, because I'm hunting with a bow, no blind or anything. I want to find a spot I can sit with a big tree right in front of me where it'll allow me to draw when the gobbler goes behind it. We walked on up in there at 10:30 at night. And now I want people to know that 10:30 at night is not really late in the late season, especially in the Midwest. Sunset is not until like 9:30 or so. But by the time you spend the 30 minutes or so afterwards trying to roost and then drive back to where you're camping or whatever, it's well after 10, So it's not super late. Anyway, while we were setting up, my spot, just kind of moving limbs, brushing a little spot in, I owl hooted and got him to gobble again. And then I turned on the camera and say, hey, folks, watch this. And he gobbled again. He was still gobbling when we walked away. I don't know. I don't think he got much sleep that night.
Sometimes you can't get them. Once the sun goes down, they won't do a dang thing of gobbling. So to do it like that, like,
I was just super surprised at the way this gobbler was acting. I don't think, I don't know. He must have not had much pressure, or he drifted off the private land that was nearby. There's some private land right near there. And so maybe he wasn't hunting on the private land, so he was still kind of a little dumb, but he learned, he got some lessons learned that morning.
He came in, he had no air left in him by the time he come to you. That's why.
He gobbled his head off on the limb the next day too. I mean, just as soon as it started getting at least a little bit of light, started gobbling. And that's another clip you probably saw where it says, I don't think it's going to do much good, but I'm going to call to him anyway, because he'd already been just gobbling. And so, but then he responded to my call and just really started, gobbling even more. So I'm not going to spoil too much more about it, but it's a great hunt, and it'll be out, I think, next week.
So I guess my follow-up question to that would be, how late do you think you could, like, if you're on a road trip, right? You're out of state, new dirt, you don't know where you are, and you're really trying to find a bird. How late do you think you can really effectively push it, well after dark, and still get a bird to respond for the morning? Is it a proximity thing? Like, do you have to get closer because it's later?
You mean closer to the bird?
Yeah, if it's like super late, do you have to be like more in their wheelhouse to get that shot?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just their willingness to gobble. I will say this about 30 official sunset and official sunrise. Those are my times to go by. I don't like when people say, about 6 a.m. whatever. I want to know official sunrise and official sunset. That dictates a lot for me when I'm out there roosting and when I'm hunting and getting on a bird or to set up on a bird in the morning. But typically 30 minutes after official sunset is about the shut-off time when I can't get a bird to gobble again.
Mm-hmm.
I have gotten them to gobble later. Obviously, we just talked about that. But about 30 minutes after official sunset, it's not, well, I shouldn't say 30 minutes. It's a little bit more, 35 minutes, where it's almost pitch dark. You still got some light in the sky, but not much. And that's when it's very difficult to get them to gobble. I usually start trying to roost them. From what I've seen, is turkeys normally fly up to roost, in the early season, about 10 or 15 minutes after official sunset.
Mm-hmm.
You got about a 15, 20-minute window there. And actually, you can get a little bit later after official sunset in early season because it's still lighter in the woods later. There's no leaf foliage. But in the late season, when all the trees are greened up, turkeys start flying up to the trees 10 to 15 minutes before sunset, official sunset. And so that's when based on the season, time of the year, how much foliage there is when I'll start making that first owl hoot, get them to gobble on the roost. And what they typically do is they won't gobble on the ground a lot as well as easily as they will once in the limb settle down. They're on the ground, they're looking for a tree, you owl hoot, they didn't gobble to you, but then they fly up to the limb and they're going to spend the next few minutes popping and getting settled. But once they're set on the limb where they're just kind of looking around, then they'll gobble. And I've actually witnessed this while I was filming a turkey, a ridge. I was hoping to get one to gobble, and I didn't realize I caught it with the camera, him flying up. But you see me owl hooting and hear me owl hooting, and he didn't gobble. And I was like, well, I guess there's no turkey up there right now or something. I forget what it was. And then I noticed him with my eyes. He had changed limbs and he got in a spot where I could see him. I said, that looks like a turkey. I got binoculars, and sure enough, there he was. I owl hooted and he gobbled. And I'm like, oh, okay, why didn't he gobble the first time? Well, I went back and watched the footage, and he flew up. He was moving around the limb, trying to get settled all this time, and I'm owl hooting, and he was not paying me any attention. He was too busy trying to find him a spot to sleep for the night. But once he got settled down, he would gobble every time at an owl hoot. So I say this. I try to wait till I think they're at least up in the trees, and then I start owl hooting. It's much easier to get them to gobble then than it is when they're still on the ground.
Makes sense.
That's awesome. Yeah, they're one of just them birds that, man, it just, no matter what it takes or what it goes into it, they always keep you learning. Like, it's always some type of crazy thing that happens. And they all have their own type of attitude, and they all have their own little thing, They're just,
That's for sure.
but it keeps us coming back for more. So, Shane, I have one last question for you, man, and we kind of want to know this is what drives you outdoors?
Turkey hunting.
Well, I figured
It used to be a Ford Explorer, but that's in the scrap heap now.
We get one in 100. It was a Toyota Tacoma, but now it's a Ford Explorer this time, Steve. No. No, we just always ask everybody. It's kind of our question is like what drives people to get them going, and because everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, well, I can give you an answer. I mean, like spring turkey hunting is my thing. I like early season deer hunting too, and it's not just obviously the killing or anything like that. The actual hunt to pursue the gobbler gives me a reason to get out there in the woods in the spring. But I just enjoy being in the woods when the world is kind of being reborn after a long winter. Especially since I moved to Minnesota, the winters up here are so freaking harsh. And then you get like up here, no lie, it was so cold during the week, like in the negative 20s. And you get a day here and I'll give you an example. I walked outside and I had just a light hoodie on. I'm like, boy, it's nice out today. I get in the car and start driving. It was 13 degrees. And it's amazing because we just came from a week of negative 20s, how warm that felt. And I'm like in a little light hoodie. I felt good. There was no breeze. The sun was out. But to my point, though, that's what spring up here, spring is to me in general. Even when I live in South Carolina, trees are starting to bud out. The birds are starting to sing. It's the mating season. Little baby animals are starting to be born and hatch or whatever. Just sitting up on a ridge top and listening to all that, and then I get to, on a gobbler too in the environment that I love the most. That's what gets me out there.
I love it.
I remember
exactly.
I was just going to say, I remember noticing exactly what you just said because I grew up a deer hunter my whole life. I've seen hundreds of sunrises in the deer woods in the fall, November. And I got into turkey hunting later in life. And I remember that first morning in the turkey woods and the sun came up and the birds chirp different and the air feels different. And I'm like, oh, this is a different sunrise. This is not the same sunrise that I'm used to in November, So I can really relate to what you just said.
And the smells, it's the sounds and the smells, all the flowers, the different aromas,
Yeah.
you're getting out there. It's something enjoyable for me and a lot of people, obviously.
Yeah.
So we're on that same latitude as you are, and it's definitely one of those things like here, like we have those crappy winters, the snow's deep, it's 10 degrees. When it's 35, 45 degrees out and like you said, everything starts to green and everything starts to bud, like it's a different world than being down in the south in the spring. Like the world literally comes back to life.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's kind of crazy, but I can't wait for it, man. It's right around the corner. I mean, we're talking, we're almost in it. Like it's one of those things that we look forward to, and it just restarts our hunting season.
That's
So
right.
it's super nice. Shane, do you want to drop kind of where they can find you, where they can find your calls, where they can go and check you out on YouTube and follow along as your season starts to progress?
Yeah, that's an easy answer. Your one-stop source for all that is ShaneSimpsonHunting.com. That's where you can get my calls. There's links to my YouTube and all my social, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all right there on my website at the bottom. I don't need to spit out a bunch of names for those.
Mm.
You just go to ShaneSimpsonHunting.com. You'll find it all right there.
And I'll leave it with this. And me and Steve have been looking all over for one of the best owl hooters or owl tubes in the
Mhm.
world, and there is nobody that makes them better than you do, Shane. So I think everybody should go and get one if they want to learn how to owl hoot. Shane definitely makes the best owl hooter.
There's a little caveat. I appreciate that, but I was making them for hooks calls, but I don't make them for them anymore. So you, sorry to
Yeah,
burst y'all's bubble.
yeah.
But I do have a recommendation. You could go there and buy one from Hooks, but I've been running, the James Harrison's the one that designed that call originally, and I'm running one of his calls also.
Oh,
So there's a link in my gear list if you want to get a call like this. It's a great sound. That's what I've competed with for so long, and the this one
so
here.
you don't make them for hooks no more?
No, so I. a little
Sorry.
That's fine. I just recently resigned from their pro staff. Just I'm going independent, I guess you will.
Hmm.
But, I built them and tuned them for them. Scott Hook, that owned the company before he passed away, he did all that. And then so when his nephew took over the company, they didn't have anyone there to put them together and tune them. And so I stepped up to it. And I think they got someone now trained up where they know how to tune it or someone with some experience. So I'm not doing them anymore. So hopefully they've got somebody in place that's good with that.
Uh, well, when you were tuning them, you made the best ones. All right, so that's I'll leave it
I
at
still
that.
have some. I appreciate it, but I, to
I
be
got,
re-
I got the
to be
best alcohol there is. It cannot be duplicated. I'm confident you tuned mine. Okay, I'm.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. That's where I'm at.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. It's to be honest though, I really don't have the time to tune owl hooters. I got so many mouth calls and pot call orders that I'm dealing with. I don't know if I could find the time right now. I'd have to do it in the summer. So
I'm a sucker for a good owl call, and like I said, the one that I have is like my holy grail. And you put an owl call in front of me, I'm going to try it out, and every single
yeah.
time I'll pick one up and I'll blow it and I'll put it right back down because I cannot find one better than the one that's in my vest right now.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
I have the poly hooks. I,
Okay.
I had both. I had a wood one and poly, and the poly one was just lights out, and I stuck with that one.
Mm.
Do you have it handy? Is it
I,
one that I? Is
it's
it
a.
one that I tuned?
I'm going to say yes because I
Yeah.
want.
I,
If you look down in the throat,
Yeah.
this is the top part. But if you look down in the throat,
I'm gonna have to grab mine real quick while y'all talking about this.
you
Hold
look
on.
down in the throat of it.
Yeah.
You had to shine a light. You'll see my initials right there. If I'm the one that tuned it and assembled it,
And I almost don't want to look because I want to tell myself that you did. But
I never just don't look.
I'm gonna look when I go upstairs. But I'm serious when I say this. I will. I was at the Harrisburg show a couple weekends ago, and I picked up a couple of owl calls and tried them, and it's like
It's
I can't replace the one I have. It's just
it's a good possibility. It's one I put together because I did thousands of them. So
So I have mine right here. Does it come apart?
no, yours it's glued together. So you'd have to
Oh.
look down,
you need a flashlight.
shine a light
Oh.
down there, and you'll see the initials. You'll see my initials. You'll see something in writing in white down there. If it depends on when did you get it.
I don't know
Keep
if you'll be able to
smiling.
see it.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
it's in there.
I see it.
You see SLS in there?
It says SS in mine.
Okay, SS. I did some SS. I did some SLS. My full
So
initial.
I'm gonna tell you right now, this is the best. See, I
Dude, you
was
can
I
sell
was
that. You can
validating.
sell that on eBay right now for a couple,
I
bro.
ain't giving this up. Do you know how many turkeys this thing is? It's
So,
killed
were you
alone.
tuning all of them at one time, or
Yeah,
only?
I was doing the wood ones, the walnuts, the Osage, the synthetic ones. I was doing them all, and that adds some complexity for them. They number one, I'm not tuning it for free, so they did pay me a little bit to tune each one. But also, you got to ship all this stuff to my house, and I got to ship it all back to them. So it makes sense for them to have someone in house once they figure out how to tune them. And then there's a lot of nuances to tuning these things to get them just right. You ask
Mhm.
any duck call tuner or call maker, they know what's involved. So it makes sense for them. I live in Minnesota; they're in Arkansas. If they can get somebody local to do it, that's better for them.
I got mine
And
at NW. I got this one from NWTF last year when I
yeah,
was in NWTF. And the
Hmm.
reason I know that it came from you is because I walked by the booth and you had a bunch of them and you were bringing them to the booth. So I knew that it was from you.
yeah, I delivered a bunch last year right to the convention. I drove
Yeah,
down with them.
yeah. That's how I
She,
knew.
for, forgive me if this wasn't you, but I recall watching a video and somebody had run a drill bit through the end of theirs and opened up the hole. Was that you?
Yep. Yes, and the reason I did that is because I'm filming my hunts. I got lav mics. I got shotgun mics. Obviously, my owl call is going to sound loud on camera, but everyone kept saying, your call sounds louder than mine. And I was like, it's probably just me blowing it and also the microphone's picking it up. But I wanted to show people if they didn't really like the volume of their call, they could drill out the holes. And I did a demonstration. I
Hmm.
took a call that to me was fine. It sounded fine. And on video, I just drilled out a hole a little bit and made it sound. And the sound, it got louder and the sound didn't deteriorate. Now, once you get to a certain point, you drill those holes too much. If you're not holding your hands just right, it won't sound very good.
Yeah.
You'll start losing that
Mm.
realism.
I, I,
So
oh, go ahead.
in that video, I describe how to just use a slightly smaller or larger drill bit than your hole, and do one hole at a time, and then increase the drill bit just a 16th or whatever, or 32nd, until you get to the volume you like. And as soon as you start hearing the sound deteriorate, then stop. Don't do any more.
Yeah, I remember seeing that video and I was like, I said, nah, you can't mess with perfection, man. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
with mine.
Yeah, I've got it. I've got an old hook owl hooter sitting here one somewhere, a walnut one, and I love the sound of it so much. I will not risk ruining it by drilling a hole in it. But
Yeah.
if you're just using it for hunting or something, um, sure, experiment with it. And if you start losing a little realism, like I said, then maybe you just stop right there and
Yeah.
go from there.
Mm.
Oh, she's staying right how she is. She's perfect.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get the new one because I'm gonna need something else to put in there. But that'll be
Yeah,
good.
I'll probably have them. I'll probably have them available on my website next year. But right now, you can just go to the link and you can buy them. I don't know how many he's got available right now.
I'll
But
wait. I'll wait until
Yeah.
next year when you get them. We got
yeah,
plenty. We got the good stuff now. We're
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So,
I want one with that SS on it.
yeah, that's
All
it.
right. I'm not gonna take over tuning them for him. He does
Just take
plenty
it
good
apart
on
and
them.
sign it for us, all right? And then you can send it out so we know, right, Chad?
Yeah. Oh, I'll sign them. Yeah. Do I get an extra buck for signing them?
Yeah, that's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, or you can come in the Northeast and kill a turkey with it, then sign it. How's that?
All right, that'll work.
Shane, it's been an absolute pleasure, bud. We're looking forward to watching the 2025 turkey season unveil for you. It's thank you very much for joining us. It's been a blessing to have you, telling some stories and stuff, and hopefully it won't be the last time. And for everybody else, thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor Drive.